of open source, like what comes to mind?
Saving money.
Saving money. Anything else?
WordPress.
As you said. Good. Code? Yep.
Collaboration.
Collaboration.
Awesome. Community?
Gotta be techie.
Free. Microsoft? Yeah. All of those?
Linux.
Underneath it is open source, and then it's an open sort of collaborative distributed community as well. So I'm thinking back to the things that people said when they thought about open source software, all of which I think probably are a piece somewhere. So there is an open source, distributed, collaborative nature. And I think as we go on, it's going to be very interesting to see what's the collaborative and distributed nature of the blogging and the BlogHer communities and see how they match. There's also an open source, there is a technical basis to it. And so for getting involved, there's really two tracks. There's a very technical track, and in some of the projects, of which Mozilla is one, but there are many, there are also increasing amounts of outreach, writing, marketing, and communication that's increasingly critical to what we're doing. And so it is the case that there's a technical basis, but it's not the case that that's the only space, and you have to be really technical to actually participate. And the third thing, when I think of open source, is it is often a value-based community. Not completely, and as open source becomes more mainstream, that starts to fragment a bit. But if you get into the free open source projects where people voluntarily develop them together, you'll find in most cases there's a very strong value system. And so as you think about joining an open source community or wanting to be part of one or improving WordPress or whatever's on your mind, it's really worth thinking about the values. And some are shared across open source. I think you mentioned them, but I would say equal participation. So if you go to an open source community, you won't hear the words equal participation. You will hear our open source or free software license says. And if you're not careful and you start talking about the license, you will get, it's very easy to get flamed unless you realize that's sort of the constitution and the core value statement. But what it translates into for all the rest of us is the right to participate, that that's a shared asset and you can earn and develop the same levels of authority as anyone else. And so that's a really important value as you work your way into it, or as you even think of approaching an open source project. And as was mentioned earlier, the openness and transparency piece, which is probably related to blogging, but a little bit different because the core of the project is not about communication. The core of the project usually starts with building software. And so this communication piece and making, if not everything, but more and more of your decision-making process and your authority transparent is a pretty shared value across the open source projects. And the idea that this work should be free and available and people should be able to use it, I think, is shared across most open source projects. And then beyond that, so you should keep that in mind, beyond that with different projects, you'll find different values. So I don't know much about WordPress as a community, so I couldn't really say.